This is a special report on the fuel crisis in Sri Lanka that is currently continuing to aggravate as the days pass by. Specifically today, as of right now, there is still no accurate information available about the amount of fuel stocks that are in possession of Sri Lankan authorities. But we will bring you reports now on the information that are available based on statements made by authorities and responsible individuals in the government. Of course, yesterday Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe speaking said that Sri Lanka can only, or the authorities can only provide 50% of the fuel requirement of the country. However, this morning there were 10 situations reported at a number of locations where people demanded for fuel. These situations were reported in areas like Dehiwala and Panchagavatta. Many school students faced adversities when travelling to their schools because many of the school transport services did not operate, of course, due to the shortage of diesel and petrol in the country. A diesel shipment is due to arrive in the country in a few days. However, there is still no finality or a final decision on when the next petrol shipment in the country will arrive. Also, yesterday being a Poya day, fuel was not issued from the issuing stations in Trincomalee, Kolonnava, Sapugaskanda and Muthurajavela. And therefore there is now a serious shortage of fuel at certain fuel stations in the country. Our correspondents from across the island reported to us on the situation at many of these fuel stations. Let's first take a look at the situation in Kurunegala. Now these were school students in Kurunegala who found it difficult to make their way to schools on the one hand because school transport services were not operating or they were not operating as usual because of the diesel shortage, and on the other hand because public transport services were also operating at a lower level, again because of the situation. Now school students were seen travelling in trains and buses that were packed to the brim. Some students and people in general who are travelling to work were seen travelling on footboards of trains and buses. Also, tense situations were reported at a number of fuel stations where people were demanding for fuel. Of course, we are reporting on these matters to keep the people abreast of what is really happening in the country. Of course, these are not ideal situations and violence should not be resorted to during these times of crisis, because becoming violent and expressing heightened emotions at these locations will not solve the problem in any way. But of course, to keep the people abreast of the latest of news, this was the situation that was reported in Dehiwala this morning. Tensions were reported at the fuel station. The police and other law enforcement authorities were called to the location to quell the tensions that were reported at this Dehiwala fuel station. Also, tensions were reported at a fuel station in Panchagavatta as well. Once again, we are reporting on these matters to keep the people abreast of the latest that is happening in the country. It is advisable that the general public do not resort to such measures and do not resort to violence, because that is in no way a solution to the issues that we are facing right now. Now, these are some of the fuel queues that were reported from outstation areas. This is a fuel queue that was seen in Horana. People were seen waiting for diesel, petrol and even kerosene oil. There were long queues of people waiting to purchase these basic essentials at these fuel stations. You can see this line clearly extends to maybe even more than a kilometer, and many of these vehicles are waiting to pump diesel. This is the fuel queue that was seen in Horana. These visuals were brought to us by our correspondents island-wide, who continue to keep us updated, and we in turn will keep the people abreast of the latest of information that is available to us. We'll now shift your attention to the situation or the availability of fuel in Batiklo. These were the people who were waiting to purchase fuel in Batiklo. Many of these people were waiting to purchase petrol. Of course, as I mentioned before, the next diesel shipment is due to arrive tomorrow. However, there is no finality on a date as to when diesel shipments will arrive in Sri Lanka. We'll now take a look at the situation in Hambantota. Many outstation areas in the country also reported similar situations as far as the availability of fuel goes, as is seen in Colombo. Long queues for petrol, diesel and kerosene. This was the situation in Hambantota. These visuals were recorded today. This is the current situation in Hambantota as far as the availability of fuel goes. Sri Lanka has a number of manners in which Sri Lanka is importing fuel right now in the face of this economic crisis. One of these methods was the Indian credit line that Sri Lanka received. Sri Lanka initially received a $500 million credit line from the Exim Bank in India, following which a further $200 million credit line, $200 million credit line was extended once again from India. Sri Lanka now have requested for a further $500 million credit line, again to import essential fuel to the country. However, there is still no response from India. The Indian authorities are considering the request. However, we can confirm that a request for a further $500 million to import fuel has been made from India. And as far as the $500 million and the $200 million credit line that was previously granted from India, a total of $700 million was granted to Sri Lanka, and the final shipment under this $700 million credit line that was extended to Sri Lanka on 2 occasions is due to arrive in the country tomorrow. So any further fuel shipments that will arrive under an Indian credit scheme to Sri Lanka will depend on whether or not India approves the request of Sri Lanka for a further $500 million credit line to again import fuel. The Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Vijayasekar, is currently attending a meeting regarding this situation. We will continue to keep in touch with the authorities, to keep in touch with our correspondents, and bring to you the latest news as far as the fuel availability in Sri Lanka goes. Stay tuned, stay connected. We are News First, and the people here always come first.